part of the Plato shebang. I've got my crew behind the camera who refuse to go camera. Stop mocking me. And they have been a great help and support through these hard times with the video making stuff. Plato says that the object of knowledge is the good, whatever that is. At the start, Plato defines the good to not be knowledge or pleasure. It's neither one of those things. But what is it? She says with suspense, and Socrates struggles to say.
I'm afraid it is beyond me, and if I should try, I will make a fool of myself and be laughed at.
Why is he well?
And then he attempts to define the form of the good through the simile of the sun.
I shall try by looking at the child of the good, the sun.
Apparently he's Welsh. Within the simile, the sun represents the form of the good, and the physical world represents the intelligible world. Just as the sun gives visibility to this physical world, the form of the good gives visibility to the intelligible world. We need the sun to see clearly in the physical world, and we need the form of the good to think clearly in the intelligible realm. Just as the sun gives power of sight to the eye, the good gives power of knowing to the mind. As well as this, the sun nourishes stuff in the physical world, such as makes plants able to grow and all that sort of thing. The form of the good gives nourishment to thought and ideas and the forms, other forms.
In the intelligible realm.
In the intelligible realm. The main way we can criticise Plato with this simile is the fact that he never defines what good is. He is so unclear that it's just like a massive unclearness. As with all the other similes, you can criticise the fact that it is an analogy and not actual real stuff. Furthermore, Plato is very, very vague when he uses analogies, and therefore it does not create a very clear idea of what he's trying to tell us, and thus is very unsound. The idea that the good is like the sun, we can use this against Plato because it's never very clear how exactly the sun relates to the form of the good. For example, does he think that the form of the good is in our solar system as a burning ball of gas? As well as this, things are deemed good by their function. It is unclear how a good dog and a good computer relate to each other in terms of their goodness, especially nowadays, since a good dog being good would be different to a good computer being good, and it's unclear how they share in the form of the good. We place the idea of goodness upon these things externally, whereas Plato believes that they are inherently within them, and that for us does not make sense. The simile of the line, or the simile of the divided line, basically furthers the simile of the sun. Plato is generally trying to attempt to make it a little bit more clearer what he means. Whether he does that is quite debatable. Basically, there are two realms, the intelligible realm and the visible realm, or the sensible realm, depending on what you call it. These two realms can be further split into four mental states, that us humans have. The first state, a state of ignorance, is icasia, or illusion, which relates to shadows and reflections in the visible world, or the sensible world. The next stage up is pistis, or belief, which relates to physical objects in the world, like my face, or the glasses, or the camera with which I am recording, or these curtains. At this point we switch into the intelligible realm, which is a bit more fancy, and generally Plato believes it to be more clearer, because it is generally perceived to be bigger on the diagrams, as you can see here. Within the intelligible realm there is dianoia, or mathematical reasoning, which relates to maths and numbers and the mathematical forms and all that jazz. And finally you get to dialectic, which is like knowledge, noesis, awesome, which relates to the forms, and finally like the form of the good at the top of that. So if you're up there, you're one fine bro. Yeah. As well as emphasising the distinction between the intelligible realm and the sensible realm, Plato's also showing the rationalist elements within his philosophy here, because it kind of relies on rationalism, since the point that opinion can only be gained from the intelligible realm is clearly a rationalist statement. However, as always, we can criticise this. You cannot distinguish between knowledge and belief by a mental state. because we can't really know that sort of thing. Sorry, Plato. Despite the simile being a diagram, it is still rather unclear what the hell Plato is trying to tell us, because he doesn't ever really define truly what he means by things, because, yes, pistis could be physical objects, but what if I don't believe that to be the way things are? But then, obviously, I'm a person and I'm stupid. Finally, we are unaware how maths relates to the forms, because he never tells us, like, a lot of the things Plato's trying to convey. We are unaware how maths link to the forms, because we can tell shadows and reflections and physical objects, that makes sense. But maths forms and actual forms, it's blurry. The divided line is quite difficult to describe, but I think it is one of the clearest similes, but I don't think I'd like it to come up on the exam, because it's quite difficult to describe. Yeah. Socrates struggles to say.
No, it's Socrates struggles to say.
Okay. I'm sorry.
So what is it? Socrates struggles to say. And then
Socrates. Okay. Socrates.
Socrates.
Socrates struggles to say.
No, you see, you've done it again.
I'm sorry. What intonation are you wanting me to use?